This list of strangely terrifying yet wonderful dinosaurs would not be complete without Dilophosaurus. As terrifying as it has been in movies, the fear has been contained a bit by motion picture studios shrinking it to the size of a large dog. In reality, the real Dilophosaurus was a huge, ruthless pack hunter that did not need a brightly coloured neck frill or paralyzing venom to take down its prey. Speed and lethality seems to have worked quite well for it. At about 7 meters, which is 23 feet, in length, with a weight of about 400 kilograms, which is 880 pounds, Dilophosaurus was one of the earliest large predatory dinosaurs, and it actually held the title of being the largest known land animal up to that point in early Jurassic North America. It was slender and lightly built, and the skull was proportionally large, but delicate with a narrow snout. It had a pair of front-to-back, arched crests on its skull. Their complete shape is unknown, but they were probably enlarged by keratin for threat or courtship display purposes. The teeth were long, thin and curved with almost all bearing strategic serrations on both the front and back edges. The neck was long with hollow vertebrae, making Dilophosaurus much more agile than one would predict a dinosaur of its size to be. The long, powerful arms ended in hands with 4 fingers, with the first being a bit short but with a strong, large, menacing claw. The other 2 claws were longer and thinner, and bore smaller claws, with the 4th being vestigial. The relatively massive thigh bone ended in wide yet functional feet, each housing large claws. Dilophosaurus was designed from the ground up for speed, strength, and lethality. Few in North America's early Jurassic would have been able to resist the onslaught of such a creature. Dinosaurus was a truly bizarre-looking creature, with huge clawed hands, a beaked head like a duck and a hump like a camel, and I find it to be unsettlingly bizarre even for the late Cretaceous, unsettling enough to be on a list of terrifying dinosaurs that would give one an absolute fright if suddenly face to face with one. Dinosaurus was an unusual ornithomemosaur, the largest of the group at 11 meters, which is 36 feet, long and weighing 7.2 short tons. Bulky animal as it was, it also had many hollow bones, which probably saved on overall weight. The arms were some of the longest of any bipedal dinosaur at 2.4 meters, which is 7.9 feet, long, sturdy, blunt claws on its 3-fingered hands. I'd give this alleged herbivore the right of way. Now that I have given name to that fear, I suppose that it is easy to guess that the next on this list must be Therizinosaurus, the actual longest-armed bipedal dinosaur. Therizinosaurus is believed to have most likely been herbivorous. So why is it on a list of dangerous dinosaurs? Because this creature possessed the longest claws of any animal we know of, reaching up to 3 feet in length. 3 feet. Think about what a single swipe from those claws would do to any animal that threatened it. Therizinosaurus was enormous, potentially up to 33 feet long and weighing several tons. Predators would have thought very carefully before approaching this dinosaur. The danger here is not predatory aggression but rather defensive capability, and that makes Therizinosaurus one of the most dangerous animals to encounter that has ever existed. Not just an unusually dangerous herbivore. Pachycephalosaurus. Here is another dinosaur whose danger is frequently underestimated because it was not a carnivore. Pachycephalosaurus had a skull dome up to 10 inches thick. Research has shown these thick skulls showed evidence of injury and remodeling consistent with repeated head-on impacts. These dinosaurs were ramming each other and likely any other threat in their environment with significant force. If you put yourself in front of a charging Pachycephalosaurus and that domed skull connected with your body, the result would be devastating. Pure biomechanical force delivered through one of the most impact-resistant structures in the animal kingdom. Headbutts from Pachycephalosaurus would put the meanest goat or ram to shame. 95 million years ago, North Africa was ruled not just by giants on land, but by a predator at the water's edge. With crocodile-like jaws, dagger teeth, and a sail rising above the river mist, Spinosaurus waited, hoping to not be given away by even just one ill-placed ripple itself, until one ripple gives its prey away. It was one of the largest and strangest dinosaurs out there. It seems as though every couple of years there are new fossils found and new theories that consistently return it to the center of paleontological attention. Spinosaurus is actually the largest carnivorous dinosaur we have strong fossil evidence for, measuring potentially over 50 feet long. Only recently have other dinosaur fossils been found, mainly T-Rex, of course, that come anywhere near challenging this terrestrial size contest. That alone earns it a spot on my list. What made Spinosaurus particularly frightening was its lifestyle. Evidence suggests it spent a significant amount of time in and around water, hunting massive fish and using its unusually shaped tail as a directional rudder. At a size that was longer than a school bus, effectively patrolling rivers probably required these sorts of evolutionary adaptations. Its jaws were long and crocodilian, with sharp teeth that were perfect for snapping up slippery sea life before it could escape. For a long time, people dismissed Spinosaurus as primarily a fish-eater, but newer research suggests it was far more eclectic and capable than we once thought. This was not a gentle giant paddling along peacefully. This was an apex predator in an environment full of massive prey that had evolved perfectly to dominate that ecosystem. Allosaurus. This dinosaur tends to get overshadowed by the famous T-Rex, which is a bit unfortunate because Allosaurus was extraordinary long before the Cretaceous explosion of powerful dinosaurs. This aptly named Lion of the Jurassic ruled the plains due to size, strength, and sheer power, long before the larger and even more powerful Tyrannosaurus rex evolved during the following Cretaceous era. So these two apex predators of North America never met. It is a lot like Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus, respectively. Each of these two thoroughly dangerous prey animals had to contend with a different one of these predators, hanging around waiting for them to become injured, old, careless, or maybe just for one to have a bad day. Allosauroidea is made up of two groups of dinosaurs, the Allosauridae, which includes the aforementioned late Jurassic Allosaurus, and the Carcharodontes, Auridae, which includes Carcharodontosaurus. Living about 155 million years ago, Allosaurus was the dominant large predator of its time. It grew to about 40 feet long and possessed a skull that researchers sometimes describe as behaving like a hatchet, slamming the upper jaw down onto prey repeatedly rather than biting and holding like a crocodile. This attack strategy would have been devastating, essentially using its entire head as a weapon. Fossils show evidence of Allosaurus preying on massive sauropod dinosaurs, animals that were far larger than itself, which tells us this predator was not only fearless, but strategically dangerous. I find myself thinking of that classic museum diorama or poster of 2 or 3 Allosaurus attacking a massive injured sauropod like Diplodocus. As we have probably all read by now, there are fossils of Allosaurus bearing Stegosaurus tail spike injuries, with one famous spike to the pelvis area appearing to be the proximate cause of death. This was one of the most lethal of these encounters. Fossils provide direct evidence of what appears to be relatively frequent combat between Allosaurus and Stegosaurus. The most famous injuries inflicted by a Stegosaurus tail spike, called a thagomizer, include deep puncture wounds and broken bones in Allosaurus, demonstrating that these predator-prey encounters were often brutal and dangerous. But since most show healing and bone regrowth around the injury, most adult Allosaurus appear to have been able to retreat before they became a fatality statistic. This also holds true for the Stegosaurus at times as well, judging from the chunks missing from their plates, with one such bite mark in a plate matching the size and spacing of allosaur front teeth, according to paleontologists describing the fossil. The genus has historically had a complicated taxonomy and includes at least 3 valid species, the best known of which is Allosaurus fragilis, which is the most commonly described variant, although Allosaurus fossils have been found in Europe as well. This predator-prey relationship was far more common than, say, Tyrannosaurus rex and Ankylosaurus, which T-Rex may have actually avoided predation upon for two very good reasons. The first is the apparent extreme uptick in the number and variety of dinosaurs and similar creatures during the Cretaceous, and the other is self-preservation. A single well-placed swing from an Ankylosaurus tail could easily break a T-Rex's leg bones, which would probably be a fatal injury for a 7 to 9 ton predator. So they seem to have wisely preferred less heavily armoured tanks as prey, although there is one tyrannosaur fibula found that a paleontologist at the Natural History Museum of Utah described as having a fracture injury at about the height where an Ankylosaurus club would strike. The broken fibula had, fortunately for the T-Rex, healed growth mending over it, but this injury would have left the T-Rex with a bit of a permanent limp. Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus was a heavily armoured herbivore from the late Cretaceous period. Growing up to 33 feet long and weighing around 4 tons, this living tank was practically immune to predators thanks to its bony fused armour, which even included armoured eyelids. Another defensive inclusion, but an absolutely justified one. Ankylosaurus was essentially a living tank. Its body was covered in thick bony armour called osteoderms, and its most famous feature was its huge club tail, which was essentially a massive sledgehammer. Paleontologists have calculated that a full swing from that tail club could have generated enough force to shatter bone. Even a large predator like T-Rex would have thought twice about attacking an adult Ankylosaurus. The danger from this dinosaur was not its aggression, but the catastrophic injury it could inflict on anything unwise enough to approach it from the wrong angle. Carnotaurus was a South American predator that lived roughly 70 million years ago, and it was genuinely terrifying in ways that most people overlook. The name literally translates to meat-eating bull, which is obviously appropriate because this dinosaur had 2 thick horn-like projections on its skull. Nobody is completely certain what those horns were used for, but paleontologists have suggested they may have been used in combat with other Carnotaurus individuals, or possibly even in subduing prey. What made Carnotaurus especially dangerous was its speed. It had incredibly long legs relative to its body, and many researchers believe it was one of the fastest large predators to ever exist, potentially capable of running at speeds that would outpace most animals alive today. Its arms were even proportionately smaller than a T-Rex, but its immense comparative speed leaves the arm length a bit moot. Because the Patagonian fossil was preserved with large patches of fossilized skin, we know it had a scaly, bumpy hide, rather than a coat of feathers, unlike many fossils that have been found of similar dinosaurs with feathers, or their base nodules leaving impressions in the fossil record. Real velociraptors were about the size of a turkey, not the human-sized killers from movies, so most velociraptors in movies really look an awful lot like Deinonychus, which is a related clade of dromaeosaurs. Deinonychus was about 10 feet long and possessed a distinctive sickle-shaped claw on each foot that it likely used to pin or slash prey. Fossil evidence has shown Deinonychus associated with Tenontosaurus remains, suggesting these predators may have gone after prey considerably larger than themselves. The combination of speed, intelligence, those devastating foot claws, and potential pack-hunting behavior makes Deinonychus one of the most efficiently dangerous predators in dinosaur history. Utahraptor was the largest of the dromaeosaurs and is the raptor that should have been in those movies. Utahraptor was a massive dromaeosaurid predator, potentially up to 20 feet long and weighing around 1,000 pounds. Its foot claw, that signature sickle shape, was enormous, capable of inflicting devastating wounds. Utahraptor combined the intelligence and agility that made the raptor family so dangerous with genuine physically imposing size. This was not a small cunning hunter. This was a large cunning hunter. Talk about an extraordinarily lethal combination. Utahraptor was an apex predator, that lived about 126 million years ago, Giganotosaurus. This South American beast was one of the largest terrestrial predators ever discovered. Living about 98 million years ago, Giganotosaurus may have actually exceeded T-Rex in length, though it was likely less robust. Its skull alone stretched over 6 feet long. The teeth, like those of its relative Carcharodontosaurus, were designed for cutting and slicing rather than the bone-crushing bite of a T-Rex. Giganotosaurus lived alongside some of the largest dinosaurs to ever exist, including the enormous sauropod Argentinosaurus, and there is evidence to suggest it may have been capable of hunting these colossal animals. An apex predator capable of bringing down the largest prey on Earth absolutely belongs in this listing of the most terrifying dinosaurs to have ever existed. Paleontologists have discovered plenty of evidence that Triceratops was never the passive grazer that it was originally portrayed as being. The fossils frequently bear the scars of intra-species jousting matches, as well as survival death matches with large predators. Triceratops had 3 horns, one above each eye and one on the nose, and a massive bony frill protecting its neck and shoulders. The 2 brow horns could reach over 3 feet in length. Evidence from fossils actually shows T-Rex bones with Triceratops horn puncture marks and evidence that Triceratops horns were used in active combat. This was not a passive prey animal. Triceratops actively defended itself and likely attacked threats with its horns. An adult Triceratops weighed up to 12 tons and could charge at reasonable speed. Being on the receiving end of that charge was a death sentence for most things that have ever lived. These guys look dangerous because they are. Researchers are currently unsure if their much smaller cheek horns, one on each side and attached to their cheekbones, were there just to add to the overall air of menace, or whether they actually served a purpose at only 4 or 5 inches long. Gigantoraptor. This was a massive oviraptorosaur from Inner Mongolia, growing up to 26 to 28 feet long and weighing around 1.4 to 2 metric tons. It was roughly 300 times more massive than its smaller oviraptor relatives. It was a giant bird-like dinosaur the size of a giraffe or a bus. Despite belonging to a group often associated with smaller beaked dinosaurs, Gigantoraptor was enormous, and its size combined with the characteristics of its lineage, potential intelligence, speed and powerful legs made it one of the most formidable animals in its ecosystem. The sheer scale of this animal, combined with its likely behavioral complexity, puts it in genuinely dangerous territory. Experts believe smaller oviraptorosaurs lived on a mixed diet of fruit, shellfish, eggs, and insects. But the jaws of Gigantoraptor looked a little different, prompting the speculation that Gigantoraptor might have dined on both vegetation and meat to sustain its unusually large size. The broad, parrot-like toothless beak could mean that it was not as picky about its menu as smaller oviraptors, and probably did indeed dine on plants, nuts, seeds, and small animals. The long, slender leg anatomy indicates that it was surprisingly fast and agile, and so very capable of chasing down small forest creatures. Tyrannosaurus rex had what is widely considered the most powerful bite force of any terrestrial animal in the history of life on Earth. Studies have calculated its bite at up to 12,800 pounds of force, enough to crush bone completely and extract the marrow. It was not just biting prey. It was destroying the structural integrity of the skeleton itself. T-Rex was also far more intelligent than its reputation suggests. Research on its brain structure indicates it had processing capabilities closer to large modern crocodilians than to the slow-brained reptiles of popular imagination. It also had binocular vision, meaning genuine depth perception, making it an effective hunter rather than just a scavenger. It grew up to 40 feet long and weighed up to 9 tons. The combination of size, sensory capability, and that apocalyptic bite makes T-Rex one of the most dangerous creatures ever. The whole Tyrannosauridae family of large, carnivorous theropods, are actually quite terrifying predatory giants famous for sporting massive skulls, tiny arms, and incredible bite force. A case in point is Yutyrannus huali. It was a close feathered tyrannosaurid relative of T. rex from the early Cretaceous period, whose fossils have been found in what is now northeastern China. The fossils themselves bear evidence of thick feathers that were most likely a form of insulation at that point. Yutyrannus clearly had no flight capabilities that rationality would suggest. I would argue that Tyrannosaurus rex is one of the most dangerous creatures to ever exist on this planet. The bite force we discussed is unmatched by any land animal. Its sensory package, including exceptional smell, binocular vision, and potentially good hearing, made it a hunting machine in the truest sense. It was not fast by absolute standards, but it did not need to be. Much of its prey could not outrun it over short distances and had nowhere to go when it targeted them. T. rex was also far more behaviourally sophisticated than early depictions suggested. Evidence from growth studies suggests it lived in overlapping territories and may have had social behaviours. Parent T. rex individuals appear to have cared for young based on certain fossil evidence interpretations. A highly intelligent, socially aware, 9-ton predator with the most powerful bite on land in Earth history is the definition of dangerous. It is the complete threat package. No other animal in dinosaur history combined maximum offensive capability with genuine sensory intelligence and physical dominance at quite this level prior to this. I would also like to make note at this point that we only know about the dinosaurs that left fossils, and fossilization is an incredibly rare event. The vast majority of animals that have ever lived never became fossils, which means there could have been predators in the dinosaur era that we have never discovered and may never discover, that were more dangerous than everything mentioned here. As terrifying as the ones we have found are, just imagine what may be waiting in store for us in some new dig site. The dinosaur era lasted for over 165 million years, many times longer than the current era of Homo sapiens. Every few years, paleontologists announce a new discovery that rewrites what we thought we knew. New species, new behaviours, new evidence of things that challenge everything. Just recently, in geological terms, we lost the entire dinosaur world in what appears to have been one of the most catastrophic events in Earth history, when the Chicxulub asteroid impact, combined with massive volcanic activity, drove these animals to extinction around 66 million years ago, leaving for the most part only some of the smaller, less sturdy birds and early mammals to survive that massive disaster. Truly ironic survivors of the age of giant dinosaurs at the very least.